Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session looking at Julia Agrippina, Empress of Rome by Thomas May. We've done two readings of Thomas May plays before, one of which we went yay and one of which we went because it's all right. I don't think we hated it. It's just we thought it's just a bit meh. Anyway, so I'm really curious to see which way we're going to fall. Are we going to fall in the meh? Or are we going to go ooh? And see what we get out of it. It was written / performed around 1628. Apparently, there is apparently some solid evidence that is when it happened and that it was performed in some fashion. I don't know what that evidence is. I can't find it anywhere. But I've been reliably informed that is approximately when these things happened. We have a reasonably full room to read this play and find out what it's doing. Reading Nero and a Tribune is...
Hi, I'm Eric. I am here, and I am active.
Reading...
Not like a sleeper agent, just like active in a different way. I mean, yeah, anyway, whatever. I'll be quiet.
Nobody say the secret code word to activate him, okay? Just to keep it fine. Reading Pollio and Poppaea is...
Hello, my name is Lynn. I'm coming to you from the northwestern United States, where it's a little chilly.
Reading Geta and Caesar is...
Mark in the Midwestern United States, where it's very pleasant today.
Reading... Loving this. Nobody's going to see this for a year, so it's like well, the weather outside is not going to have any connect with the outside world. Anyway, reading Narcissus today is
Lois in London.
Reading Crispinus is
Alan in Suffolk. Another potato products may be available.
Reading Britannicus and a Servant is
Rachel in Canada.
Reading Vitellius and Fulvia is
Donald from very rainy Northamptonshire in England.
Reading Otho is
Connor in rainy London.
Reading Megaera and Seneca is
Aliki in sunny Athens.
Reading Reading Pallas is
Aaron from the Pacific Northwest of the United States, where it is currently dark.
And reading Caligula's Ghost. Ooh. And Agrippina is
Lynsey Beauchamp from sunny-ish, watery, sunny-ish Fife in Scotland.
So, and I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I'll be reading stage directions and moving us generally forward. So without further ado, we're going to dive in. There is a prologue. Well, is it a prologue or is it more an induction? Because it's not like there's a singular figure here. It starts with Megaera ascends.
Thus, to the Roman palace, as our home and proper mansion, is Megaera come, no stranger to these walls. Not more in hell than here do mischiefs, and we furies dwell. Let the unenvied gods henceforth possess poor peasants' hearts, and rule in cottages. Let virtue lurk among the rural swains, whilst vice in Rome's imperial palace reigns, and rules those breasts whom all the world obeys. What though the gods and virtue first did raise Rome to that height it holds? They did but make an empire large enough for us to take and build a strength for us to manage now. Though virtue made the Roman greatness grow, she now forsakes it at the height. The powers and fruits of all her diligence are ours, but to preserve that interest and keep high our hold in this commanding family, a blacker fury than myself must rise to fill these roofs with fresh impieties. Rise, cruel ghost, ascend, Caligula, that lately didst the world's proud sceptre sway beyond our wish, who, though an emperor in wickedness, wert greater than in power, and clothed with flesh among mankind didst dwell, a fiend more black than any was in hell. From those dark vaults ascend, to blast this fair and gorgeous palace like that poisonous air, which earthquakes from the ground's torn entrails breathe to fill the world with pestilence and death. comes. He comes. The very house begins to shake with horror of approaching sins. The night grows blacker than before, and I, myself, am filled with new impiety.
Caligula's ghost ascends.
Why am I raised from the vaults below? What mischiefs can an airy shadow do? What can a naked ghost perform? In vain are all intents, unless I reigned again, obeyed by all the Roman power, and wore that wicked body which I had before. What then I did, you know, and if your power could have maintained me longer emperor, I had outdone your wishes, and given birth to such new mischiefs as the suffering earth had groaned to feel. What my intentions were, did to the world in those black books appear, when all Rome's senate were to death designed, and chests of poison that I left behind, which since my death into the ocean thrown, poisoned the waves for many leagues, and on poor fishes wrought that execution which on mankind I meant they should have done. What can I now perform, alas?
Enough! With thy contagious presence blast this roof. Infect the imperial house with all the ill that hell and thou canst bring. Let mischief still reign here, and keep out banished piety, justice, and conscience. Let no sacred tie of nature or religious laws restrain their parricidal hands. All names be vain of brother, child, or parent. Let the wife with impious rage destroy her husband's life, the brother kill the brother, and the son rip up his parents' bowels.
'Twill be done. The actors are my kindred, and like mine must play their parts. Ambitious Agrippine, pursue thy cruel projects, and upon a husband's murder raise thy impious son, that he may play the parricide again, and murder thee that gavest him life and reign. That all the world, astonished at so high ingratitude and foul impiety, may fear the monster's reign, yet suffer more than they could fear, or e'er was felt before. Let what no foes, no furies durst conspire to act 'gainst Rome, nor I myself desire when I was prince, be cursed Nero's crimes. Let his dire story in succeeding times from all earth's tyrants else the wonder draw, and men almost forget Caligula.
The fates consent. That thunder which we hear from Acheron confirms the omen there. Down, wicked ghost, into thy cell below. We must no longer bide. The cocks do crow, the twinkling stars begin to hide their heads. The day would dawn, and from Aurora's bed would Titan rise, but that he fears to see such instruments of hell's impiety. The gods themselves forbid our longer stay, for fear our presence should retard the day.
Cock-a-doodle-doo. Okay, well, I really enjoyed that. I mean, if the whole play's like this, I will lose the will to live. But as an opening gambit, there's some really good stuff in there, especially as I love Hera summons this guy, and he's talking for ages and go, yeah. Shush now. Can we get on with the plot? This has lots of echoes in other texts. But I'll go to the room. Lynn.
Well, someone said in the chat something about drama. And ambitious Agrippina who murdered her husband. But that all really happened as far as we can tell from the actual record. That Agrippina had her husband murdered to make her son emperor, and then Nero had her killed. It happened that way.
Yeah, it's I'll go to Donald. so many thoughts.
I do like the idea that the actors are somehow, according to this, in collusion with Caligula's ghost, which suggests it's all a setup.
Well, yeah, what I really like about this idea, and it's actually, I think it is a sort of an idea that Robert Graves does with I Claudius, which is to say, actually, no, the next emperor needs to be worse than me, so that my reputation is made to look better. And it's exactly that concept. Caligula going, well, if we make the next guy even worse, then nobody will think I was a bit awful. And it's like, okay. I'm not sure that actually makes you better.
Nothing like British politics.
No. any politics. I'll go to Eric.
I think Lynn was waving first.
No. I'm just gesturing.
Oh, okay. Gesturing in frustration. No, I was going to say that it's kind of interesting how you get... because, like, if you... Well, more classical theatre actors will probably know this as opposed to me. But, I mean... you get like when you talk about like how to learn speeches and emoted speeches, they talk about all the vowels and like how vowels are stretched or all that stuff, and you can see how Caligula is a ghost even without like sort of without even if he wasn't named a ghost, you could tell just by the way he speaks, because you've got why am I raised from the vaults below. It's very sort of It takes a lot of effort, and like only a supernatural character would be able to do that. I think
he is written with reverb.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, I mean, we've read plays like this. We've read like sort of Spanish tragedy with Andrea coming back as a ghost. We've read like how do you call him? Misfortunes of Arthur, which starts off with like, oh yes, I want to punish that guy because I didn't get enough to say at the beginning. I seem to remember there was an epilogue that sort of went, yeah, we don't really this wasn't part of the original, but the actor considered he should write something for himself. So it's just fun, and of course Tancred and Gismondo, which came up as well.
Yeah, we're mentioning in the chat various other sort of texts that are doing similar things with gods and humans and yeah, just generally setting a tone, which I just think is just really fun. I say I'm hoping the rest. I don't want the rest of the play to be like this, but I'm very glad it opens this way. And yeah, it seems to be leaning into Thomas May's strengths, because actually this is something he did very well in Antigone, as I recall his version of Antigone. So I'm hopeful for this. Okay, we've lingered long enough with the dead. Let's go to the living. Act 1, Scene 1. Enter Pallas, Vitellius, and Pollio.
Now is the time, noble Vitellius, for you, and you, most honored Pollio, to make that service you have done complete to royal Agrippina. Briefly thus. The two commanders of the Praetorian camp, Crispinus Rufus and that Lucius Geta, must be displaced, and some of nearer trust to her designs advanced in their room. Or else our power will ne'er be full. They love Britannicus too well. This is the thing the Empress wishes. Let your eloquence and wisdom further it in Caesar's ear.
Fear us not, Pallas, but what successors have we to take their charge?
One must take all. You may pretend the inconvenience of two commanders, and so take from Caesar all jealousy of the plot.
Who shall it be?
Burrus Afranius, a wise, valiant man, beloved and honored by the soldiers. None can accept against him, and the change will not displease the camp, nor can his merit make him less thankful to her, knowing well 'twas in her power to make it otherwise. But the advancing of such able men as Seneca and Burrus will take off all envy from the Empress and ourselves. Then we with praise have wrought our purposes, and made our party strong, while Seneca shall sway the Senate, Burrus rule the camp to her designs. But I'll presume no farther to instruct your wisdoms, or much less to doubt your true affections to the state and honor of Agrippina. who will then have power to make more large requital to her friends, in which most high and happy rank you two are chiefly seated. She acknowledges herself indebted to your eloquence, noble Vitellius, who in Senate lately you proved her marriage lawful, and being censor, deposed Silenus from his praetorship, who should have married young Octavia. To you, brave Pollio, whose persuasions have been the cause young Nero now enjoys that happy marriage, which Silenus lost. But most of all she owed to both your pains in causing Caesar to adopt her Nero.
It was hard to work at first. Caesar stuck at it, alleging that the Claudian family never adopted any. And besides, when Lucius Geta and Crispinus Rufus, in love they bore to young Britannicus, told him that the adoption to the world would be ridiculous. By precedent, we did refute it, showing how Tiberius, having a son and nephew, both alive, adopted the issue of Germanicus.
My lords, 'twas nobly carried. This design that now we have in hand, though not so hard to work, will prove as advantageous. Be you with Caesar, I'll go satisfy the Empress of your loves.
Farewell, brave Pallas.
And exeunt Vitellius and Pollio.
Farewell, my lords. Go, flattering senators, go use your best persuasive eloquence, whilst I alone upon your envy rise, whilst I enjoy in Agrippina's love the fruit of your obsequious diligence. What though my birth be humble and my style but one of Caesar's freedmen, though I boast not patrician blood, nor in my galleries display old ranks of noseless ancestors or ear-cropped images, if I enjoy whatever high nobility can give respect and power, the state can witness it. The Senate fear me, and in flattery have sued to Caesar to confer on me praetorian and quaestorian ornaments, which I at last vouchsafed to accept, when my command alone has doomed to death the noblest of that order, men whose names old Rome has boasted of, whose virtues raised her to that envied height that now she holds. Their murders stupid Caesar rather chose to take upon himself than question me. Let dull patricians boast their airy titles, and count me base, whilst I commend their lives, and for the furtherance of my high intents, make noblest men my hated instruments.
Enter Narcissus.
But ha, Narcissus? Yes, there comes a man. That was my rival once, whom I feared more than all the lords of Rome, my fellow freedman. That knew our ways of power, that not the Senate, but Caesar's chamber did command the world and rule the fate of men. But fortune's turned, and he not worth my regard or fear. In mastering him, I feel my greatest strength.
Exit Pallas.
Not look upon me. Am I fallen so low? Did I, in equal place with this proud man, nay, far above him, sway the state and rule great Caesar's heart while Messalina lived? And was not their content, oh, punishment of my ambitious aims, but caused the death of that loose empress to bring in the expulsed acta Poppaea, and instead of her, have let this tigress Agrippina in, this dragon spirit, to devour us all, except proud Pallas, her adulterer? What unavoided dangers every way threatened this life! For if young Nero reign, I die, that sought to cross his mother's match. If ere Britannicus do reign, I die, that caused his mother's death. What shall I do? Where shall I lean for safety? Better trust the innocent goodness of Britannicus than Agrippina's fierce and cruel nature, nor can I hope more goodness from her son than that may give longer respite to my fear. Besides, it bears the greater show of justice and honest service to my royal master. Since we must fall, it is some happiness to fall the honest way, if we may call that honesty at all, or real virtue, to which necessity enforces us, and we by fortune, not election, practice.
Enter Geta and Crispinus.
Here comes two friends of young Britannicus. Hail, Lucius Geta! Hail, Crispinus Rufus!
Narcissus, hail!
Brave Romans, you are come fitly to ease my overburdened breast of weighty thoughts, which I dare freely trust unto your noble ears.
You may, Narcissus, trust truth with us.
Nor any honest secret.
What is't you would with us?
You know, my lords, and I must needs confess, I was a means to Messalina's death. But all the gods can witness with me how unwillingly I lent a hand to that sad action. And but for Caesar's safety, which I prize above my life and fortunes, and which then I thought endangered much by her bold act, naught in the world could have moved me to it.
What hence would you infer?
Then know, my lords, how little I respect my private ends to do the public service, and can lose myself for Caesar's good. It may be thought, when the most hopeful Prince Britannicus shall wear that wreath which all the world adores, to me it may be fatal, as a foe unto his mother. But I rather wish myself forever lost, than that brave prince should not succeed his father.
How succeed? What fear is there of that?
What power on earth can bar his right, whilst we command the camp? I'd rather see, which all the gods avert, Rome rent again with civil broils, than he should lose unjustly the imperial throne.
You're true and noble friends, and here I vow to join with you, and use my uttermost power to advance the honor of Britannicus.
What danger threatens it?
Do you not know to whom the son of Agrippina's married?
Yes.
And that honor were enough for him, without adoption too, were his aims private, and that his crafty mother did not cast away for him to the succession.
'Twas strangely done at Caesar, I confess.
They make the factions strong and cunningly increase the train of Nero and displace the faithful servants of Britannicus. Wise Seneca is recalled from banishment by Agrippina's means, not for the love she bears his virtue, but to make him hers, that Seneca's authority may gain the people's love to her ambitious son, of whose young years he takes tuition.
I think no less.
Besides, to make the match for her young Nero with Octavia, noble Silanus died, who might have proved a faithful prop to Claudius' family.
In blood that fatal marriage was begun. I fear the omen. Agrippina's fierce and cruel nature has too much been seen in this short time. Lalia Paulina, niece to Cotta Messallinus, and late wife to Caius Caesar, for no other cause than aiming once at Claudius' marriage, is banished Italy. Her goods are seized, and but 5 millions of sesterces left her, of all her great estate. But there the malice of this fell woman stays not. Now we hear a tribune is dispatched away to kill the banished lady and bring back her head.
No barbarous cruelty!
Yet more, I fear, since her Domitius is adopted now, I fear she'll shortly aim at higher blood.
We'll guard the life of young Britannicus.
I'll be vigilant for Caesar's safety. When all her ends are wrought, his death is next.
Enter Britannicus.
Here comes the youthful hope of Rome and us.
Tell me, my friends, am not I Caesar's son?
My lord, who dares question it?
I'm sure I was his eldest son, and whilst I lived, I thought that Caesar had not lacked an heir, but I at last have found an elder brother. Domitius is adopted Caesar's son. His name is Nero now. I cannot tell what is my fault.
Excellent youth. How much beyond his years he apprehends his wrongs.
Now, fear not, sweet prince, though Agrippina's son be 2 years elder than yourself, the Senate will never judge that an adopted son shall in succession be preferred before the true and natural heir.
You ever loved me. Pray, do so still.
While we have breath, my lord, you shall command our lives.
How unawares has feeble Caesar wrought a snare to catch his own unhappy life in. Grow, sweet prince, grow up to strengthen the imperial house and curb the furious malice of thy foes.
Enter Nero and Pallas.
Brother Britannicus, hail.
Hail to you, Domitius Anabarbus.
Do you scorn my salutation or not know my name?
That was your father's name, and why not yours?
How's that, proud boy?
And exit Britannicus and friends, leaving Nero and Pallas.
Well, let them go, my lord. It was not the brain of young Britannicus that could give birth to this injurious scorn, though for his years the boy be capable. But riper heads than his, there went his counsel, Crispinus Rufus and that Lucius Geta, who swell the youth with boasting hopes and think their power can give protection to his pride. I'll make them see their error and perceive one breath of mine can blow them from their strength. This news I'll bear to Agrippina straight. Come, prince, Britannicus shall find anon what feeble props his pride has leaned upon.
And they exit. Okay, this is a massive scene with an awful lot going on, and there are a lot of questions in my mind about which are flipping from one end to the other, because there's part of me going, there's a lot of information being thrown at us here. But then I'm also going, there's also a relatively straightforward amount of information being thrown at us here, plus some other detail that you probably don't need to worry about. And that's the balancing act here. I can see a few trims where sometimes they go into greater detail about somebody's life, and I'm going, just say this woman's going to die horribly somewhere, or this is going on. But you do get a real sense of the factionalism going on here, that everybody's at war with everybody else, and this court is a nest of vipers. That comes across really powerfully. So there's part of me that's sort of going, we need to navigate this text quite carefully and maybe make some very micro trims, but I'm not, when I first looked at the scale of this scene, as afraid of it as I first was. I think there are traps here. Thoughts in the room? Aliki, I think, were you travelling down a similar route?
I was travelling down a similar route, yeah. I think because the names are difficult for us, a lot of extraneous characters who are, this thing happened to them or might happen to them off stage, that references to them can just be cut. Otherwise, I think it's really quite lovely. I mean, it's a pretty text. It sings, it's full of, it's got some really vivid phrasing, and it gets the job done.
Yes, I think so. And I think it also helps you just tell the audience to watch I, Claudius before, because this is literally where I, Claudius, apart from some prophesying, this is exactly where it ends. Is Britannicus and Nero are effectively going in the future going to be duking it out, and that's where it's going. So actually, in a sense, once I twigged actually precisely where we were in that narrative, my brain clicked into place. Now, of course, not everybody's seen a 1970s BBC television series, but a reasonable number of people have. So you kind of feel that you have a bit of a scaffold to link this to. Lynn.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. A older and maybe more educated audience is not going to struggle with this. I think we do have to bear in mind, though, a difference between our audiences today and the audience at the time. I get the sense that as the period goes on, the theater becomes slightly more exclusive. So a more erudite, a more educated audience. That was certainly true of the indoor theaters. So the audience in 1628, did we say?
Yeah.
Is going to have a passing familiarity with Roman history. I mean, the Britons could have thought of themselves like London is the new Rome kind of thing. So they'll have sort of a sense of the overall shape of imperial history. So like the relationships won't be as confusing for them because they'll kind of know that. And the other thing that occurs to me is that the sort of backroom players who are actually getting things done in this court are women. Messalina, who has died already, Agrippina, and Pallas and Narcissus, who are freed slaves. These are not the people that are supposed to be running the show. And I think it would be a stronger sense in an early modern audience that the hierarchy has been overturned. The natural leaders are not leading, and the people who in the chain of being are supposed to be subservient are running things, and that's wrong. This is a world turned on its head, and so a modern audience isn't going to feel that as strong.
Well, they might. I mean, I think there's visual tricks we can do here, which is also, the emperor at the moment is Claudius, who's quite old, and if you're demonstrating that he is perhaps out of touch with what's happening in the court, there are visual ways, and there might be more of that to come later on. As a snapshot of this court as it currently stands, again, even if you're not necessarily following precisely all the details, I think we know there are factions. We can always colour code those factions a little bit as well, I suppose. I'm sure we could cheat just a little bit. I love Nero badges, Alan.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting contrast because the opening scene, was real theatrical, using the stage, the understage entries and so on. And then you get this massive info dump.
But again,
interesting contrast.
Yeah, it is. And actually, I mean, I put in the chat, that it's brutally efficient info dump at the very beginning. It is literally, hi, we're organising a bit of a thing, aren't we? Yes, we are. Tell me more. So it sort of gets on with it. But then we get these two little audience aside. These two soliloquies from Pallas and then Narcissus, who and the fact that they don't talk to each other sets up their relationship in a visual way as well, of just going, oh, he's ignoring me, is it? Oh, I'm not in a really good place, am I now? And that's not just info dumping. That's not just people talking to each other about the bad stuff going on. That is a connection to the audience. That is going out to the audience, and that's more dynamic than that actually looks on a page. Actually, that address to the audience, two conflicting addresses, and they're not excessively long either. I mean, that's the thing, is that we're talking salami trims for clarity rather than, oh my god, will they shut up? Because there's actually some of these speeches are very playable. There's something to get grip onto. But yeah, there are traps here. There are traps for the unwary. Eric, and then I'll think about moving on.
Well, what I found interesting was Nero, who's been talked about quite a bit, has turned up to sort of go, brother, you offend me. How dare you? And then that Britannicus leaves, and the last speech of that scene is left to Pallas. Who sort of goes, oh yeah, don't ignore him. He's kind of been influenced by his elders. We'll deal with it later, kind of thing, or in a different way. Because it's Pallas who goes, Britannicus shall find anon what feeble props his pride is leaned upon. So it's kind of like, it's not even Nero plotting in this case.
No, this is actually what's quite interesting. If you'd had that exchange with Nero and Britannicus, because basically Britannicus snubs him for not being as important as he is. He's going, I'm the son of the emperor, no. And if you hadn't had all the stuff that preceded this, you sort of go, Britannicus is a bit of a git, isn't he? Poor Nero. Look at it. He's come in and said, hi, brother, and he's just snubbed him. I mean, it's quite an obscure snub, because it's like you're using my old name. How dare you call that kind of thing. So it's a very sort of class attack at that moment, and that's an interesting clue. That these people are all partial, perhaps on some level. Even the ghosts are partial. I mean, nobody's impartial in this. Anyway, let's move on. Act 1, Scene 2. Enter Agrippina. Title character is entering the room. Seneca, Vitellius, and Pollio.
You are my judges.
Your poor servants, madam.
Nay, that must be your office. You have read my commentaries over, and I look for a faithful censure. I am sure, my lords, you have both learning able to discern, and such integrity as will not flatter. Speak, Seneca. I see they look on you. How do you like them?
Royal Agrippina are such, and so good they be, that ablest men may boldly speak and not offend the truth, nor you at all. The style is full and princely.
Stately and absolute, beyond whate'er these eyes have seen. And Rome, whose majesty is here described, in after times shall owe for her memorial to your learned pen, more than to all those fading monuments built with the riches of the spoiled world. When rust shall eat her brass, when time's strong hand shall bruise to dust her marble palaces, triumphal arches, pillars, obelisks, when Julia's temple, Claudius's aqueducts, Agrippa's baths and Pompey's theatre, nay, Rome itself shall not be found at all, historians' books shall live. Those strong records, those deathless monuments alone shall show what and how great the Roman Empire was.
The act is noble. Not the present world alone shall owe to Agrippina's worth, as for her gracious government it does, but future ages shall acknowledge more to the rich labors of her royal pen.
The wisest princes never sought to raise their present state alone, but to preserve themselves immortal by an endless fame. For memory of me, besides these books, if that our augurs fail not in their skill, or flatter not, that German colony which I of late deducted o'er the Rhine to Ubium, for evermore the name of Agrippina's colony shall bear.
That act, though great, declares your power alone, your wealth and greatness. These learned books express your wisdom, and for these you owe nothing at all to fortune.
Thus I mean to spend all time which from affairs of state and business of our empire can be spared.
She already turned our emperor.
Those wretches have too narrow souls who think that persons great and eminent in state can spare no time to purchase same by writing, but what they steal from action and employment, as if no mind were large enough for both. Who was more full of action and more fit to rule, nay, rule the world, than Julius Caesar? Yet he was of my mind.
Oh, strange male spirit! Can there be found no other parallel but Julius Caesar to a woman's mind?
Yet Julius was to blame. He toiled too much to get his honour, and too much debarred his nature the free use of princely pleasures. Sure, Lucius Sylla had an ample mind. 'Tis Sylla's character that Sallust gives him, a free and great enjoyer of his pleasures. Yet how industrious his actions speak. He found fit time to rule the Roman world and write both Greek and Latin commentaries.
The souls of Sylla and of Caesar both, I think, have entered her.
Well, worthy friends, you do approve my way of writing, then?
Yes, gracious madam. And because you named great Julius to us, I was thinking now that, as in blood, so in your styles of writing, there was some nearness.
Seneca, I thank you, but I confess your positive approbation pleased me as well as that comparison.
Does not your majesty esteem his book?
Indifferent well, a good, loose, careless way. I think directly with Asinius Pollio, had Caesar lived, he would have mended it. The man had far more in him than that shows.
Yet, under favour, madam, some have thought those commentaries hardly could be mended. A style so strong, naked and beautiful, free from affected words and from all gloss or dress of oratory, as instead of leading others in a way to write, it quite discourages the ablest men. So Hirtius thought, and that famed Cicero, the greatest master of Rome's eloquence.
Are those your authors then? That Hirtius was Caesar's servant, partial in his heart, or else he flattered him? For Cicero, they were so far out of his tedious strain he could not censure them.
Yet able men can truly censure of another style than what themselves have used.
He was not able, no, not in oratory. Had I ruled Rome and her Senate then as I do now, not all the orations that e'er Cicero made in the Senate should have saved one hair of an offender or condemned a mouse.
How confident she is in censuring.
Amazed. Let her have her way. Forgive my silence, noble Cicero. Here thy defence is vain. But what I spare, the tongues of all posterity shall speak.
And before we have the entrance of Pallas and Tribune, I think we should just briefly discuss what's going on here, because there's some really interesting because we've been discussing, precisely which bits of this are asides or not. None of them are marked as asides, but I think there's an awful lot of people turning to the audience. And when you look at that makes what Seneca actually says in the room quite interesting as well, because actually he's sort of not condemning what's being written, but he's also not exactly praising it either, and he's sort of trying to not really annoy Agrippina. Aliki.
Yeah, she says, what do you think of my work? And he says, oh, wow, what an elaborate style.
Yeah, you used some words on that page. There were some big words as well as small words.
I mean, and that whole literary analysis is great. It's wonderful how he kind of leaps to the defense of Caesar, almost like he can't help himself. But everybody knows Caesar's prose is great. Oh, I mean, this guy said so, and so did Cicero. And oh, you don't like Cicero either. I won't say anything now.
Yes. The line, let her have her way. I'm just going to stop saying things. Lois, I think you were waving.
Well, it's an interesting scene just because there is so much lit crit going on, rather surprisingly. And interesting that it's about a woman who's been writing. And I didn't know this about Agrippina, that she was attempting to put herself on the same level as Caesar, someone who could write and act. I mean, the action is a bit dubious, but the only thing that bothers me a bit is that it could be partly just the kind of laughing at learned ladies, and women who write are inherently funny anyway, but it doesn't seem to be falling into that trap. But
no, I think it is addressing character and power here. How do you criticize someone who basically runs the empire? How do you get, even if you're just trying to do some gentle criticism, if you can't criticize her book, what can you do in that without getting horribly murdered? Lynn, then Lynsey.
What I like about this scene is how it captures a certain aspect of the value system of classical Rome, or at least as far as we understand it. I mean, I've heard it said that one reason that the Republic was successful for half a millennium before it converted to basically one-man rule is that the well-born men of Rome were always in competition with one another for dignitas, which is where our word dignity comes from, but the meaning has shifted. It's some kind of combination of fame and renown and social influence, prestige. Everybody wanted to be the name in everyone's mouth, and the competition for that created a situation where everyone was trying to outdo everyone else in doing what was right. I'm going to throw my money at public works. I'm going to be a great general, because that's how you got famous. And that's still going on here in the empire. Agrippina wants dignitas. She wants fame. She wants influence. She wants power. She wants a kind of immortality. in how, you know, her name is going to be attached to a city. That kind of ambition for being not just powerful, but famous and respected and prestigious, and your fame is going to be lasting. That I think the scene illustrates that really well, and the comparison with Cicero and Caesar is part of that, because they're kind of the very, very famous names in Roman history. Yeah, that competition for juice, for prestige, for status is really a driving force, and the scene illustrates that really well.
Lynsey.
Yes, it just really following on from this and Lois's point about it being a woman who's talking about this. I was just minded of the phrase, history is written by the victors, and I just thought, well, she's, the way that she's sort of shoehorning Nero into the succession and all of that this is a perfect example, I think, of how usurpers enshrine their role through these works of writing history, works of public good, as they were saying, statues and what have you. This is how they become enshrined. So I think it's a really fascinating scene from that point of view, I think.
Yes, and it is that thing of all various things are going to go wrong for everybody at some point. I mean, this is Rome; that's how it works. But again, apart from what everybody said about Agrippina at this point, in a different context, this scene is perfectly reasonable. We don't know whether the book's any good. It could be fun. I mean, Seneca just could be being an arsehole. I mean, we don't know. I think the scene is pushing us in a very specific direction, but there is room for play there, and I think that makes this interesting, and that there may be some room for Vox there. I'll go to Mark next, and then we must move on.
I was trying to figure out, Vitellius feels like he is probably not being, I don't know that he's being sincere, but definitely like highly praising her, more so than Seneca was. But we were just brought up in the chat, question of what's an aside and what's not, that his last line in this exchange, how confident she is in censuring, that seems to be an aside, that seems to be indicating judgment of her in a way that seems to be kind of shared with Seneca, that those could be both separately just to the audience, but it kind of feels like they're like chatting with each other about her, which kind of raises the question of how much of Seneca's asides earlier are just to the audience versus potentially to Vitellius as well.
Yes, they could be an on-stage aside as opposed to an audience aside. In that case, if Vitellius and Seneca are on the same page, it's very different that they have very different approaches to dealing with Agrippina, because Vitellius is not really trying to pretend anything except that, hey, it's great, yeah, aren't you wonderful? Whereas Seneca's trying to dance the line between what he actually thinks and not getting horribly stabbed. Donald.
You've actually taken the words out of my mouth. I mean, I think it strikes me as more interesting if it is they are on stage asides. Certainly that last bit is. But yeah, they're just trying to keep their heads on, I think, in very different ways.
Okay, there's lots of options here. We're still mid-scene, so let's gather some more data, for we have the entrance of Pallas and a Tribune.
Tribune, madam, is returned and brings Lollia Paulina's head.
Let him come in.
Your pleasure, great Augusta, is performed.
Let me peruse this face. Ha! 'Tis much changed. Her teeth shall make me sure they did not grow the common way. I am confirmed 'tis she. Reward him, Pallas.
The gods preserve Augusta Agrippina.
O pale death, thou mock of beauty and of greatness too. Was this the face that once in Caesar's love was Agrippina's rival, and durst hope as much 'gainst me as my unquestioned power has wrought on her? Was this that beauty once that wore the riches of the world about it? for whose attire all lands, all seas were searched, all creatures robbed. This was that Paulina, whom Caius Caesar served, whom Rome adored, and the world feared.
Such a sight, methinks, should make her sadly think of human frailty.
Take hence the head, lest in her death she gain a greater conquest o'er me than her life could ever do, or make me shed a tear. I would not wrong the justice I have done so much as to lament it now. You know, my friends, she had a spirit dangerous, and though my nature could have pardoned her, reason of state forbid it, which then told me great ruins have been wrought by foolish pity.
Would she had such a nature, but 'tis now too late to give her counsel.
So let all that dare contest with Agrippina fall.
Enter a servant. Caesar is come to visit you.
Now, friends, Vitellius, Pollio, Pallas, second me.
Enter Caesar with and a Cetus.
How fares my Agrippina?
Wondrous well when I am blessed with Caesar's company.
That shall be oft, my love, when Rome's affairs and public business will give me leave.
I would partake myself of those affairs rather than want your presence.
I believe it.
Thou shalt. 'Tis only for thy dearest sake I love my fortunes. Thy sweet fellowship makes light the burthen of my government.
To ease great Caesar's care shall ever be the height of my desires. Before you came, my heart was sad. I sent for these my friends to impart the reason to them.
Sad for what?
Weighing the troubles of a princely state and all the dangers that still threaten it.
Dangers?
She strikes upon the fittest string. No passion reigns in him so much as fear.
We were devising of the fittest means to give your state security. You know your strongest guard is the Praetorian camp.
Most true.
That camp commanded now by two. Maybe by captains too ambitious, strife divided into factions, and so made less serviceable, should your safety need them.
Caesar remembers when that bold attempt of Silius was, how the Praetorian camp was by their general strife in mutiny, and had not one been chosen for that day to rule them all, Caesar had not been safe.
Who's our Pollio?
Oh, I skipped down to the line below that. Wise men in calms, is that me?
Yes.
Yes.
Wise men in calms provide for storms to come. None knows how dangerous the times may prove, though now the state be safe, and may the gods to Caesar's honor long preserve it so.
What new design is this that all of them second so readily, and I was not acquainted with it? If 't prove mischievous, I thank the emperance for my ignorance.
Burrus Afranius is a worthy man, fit for the place and faithful, well beloved by all the soldiers. Such a change, my lord, none can accept against. Let him take all.
Whate'er her ends may be, this proposition for noble Burrus' sake I must approve.
'Tis true, my love, I make no question of Burrus' worth and fitness for the place. But what offense have Geta and Crispinus been accused of, or what just suspicions are there of them?
I will not be unjust to accuse guiltless men, although I price thy safety, Caesar, equal to my life. I know no crimes of note they have commit.
Caesar, it is no loss to them at all. They both have plenteous fortunes to retire to.
And in so near a cause, who dares examine great Caesar's counsels, or inquire the reason?
Shall Burrus have it, Caesar? Speak thy pleasure. Or if my care offend, I shall hereafter forbear to meddle.
No, sweet Agrippina. Since thou will have it so, go, Pallas, draw the warrant straight and seal it in our name. Let Geta and Crispinus be removed, and Burrus take possession presently. This day, my love, the Britain prisoners sent from Astorius Scapula, and late arrived at Rome, shall be in public showed. There thou shalt see that brave barbarian prince, that bold Caractacus, whose stubborn spirit so many years contemned the Roman power. He now is taken.
'Twas a victory sent from the gods to honor Claudius' reign.
Had he been basely taken or at first yielded himself, as he had got no honour, but been forgotten in his fall, and naught had e'er been mentioned of him but his death, so had thy glory, Caesar, been far less.
Not warlike Syphax, the Numidian king, stubborn Jugurtha, nor great Perseus e'er brought to Rome by their captivity more real honour than this Britain prince.
Nor do we price our name Britannicus, fetched from that island, less than Scipio his honored name of Africanus prized.
Thy style, O Caesar, is greater far, drawn from the conquest of another world, which nature meant by interposing cold and stormy seas to guard from Latian arms.
Great Julius Caesar did but only show that land to us, whose conquest was reserved by heaven's decree to honour Claudius' name.
Caesar, let's sit together. One tribunal will hold us both.
Shall be so, my love. Thou, as myself, shalt pardon or condemn.
And they exit. And, the Caractacus aside is interesting. Because there's part of me going, hi, let's have a little bit of historical detail. Which is not unimportant historical detail, potentially, for the plot. I don't know whether the plot will do more with it or not, but there are potentially reasons why you would bring it up. Beyond, again, a sort of character note, a kind of shorthand, because it gives you a reason for everyone to start flattering Claudius in an interesting way, because they've got what they wanted out of him, which is to change who's in charge of the Praetorian Guard, because that's never going to go badly for anyone, is it? Changing who's in charge of the most vicious personal part of the army that is directly in thrall to the emperor. Changing who's in charge of that can't be a power grab at all. No, of course it can't. Isn't the Emperor great? You conquered Britain, didn't you? Do you remember doing that when you were a bit younger? And we captured the last war criminal that we, from our point of view, was, this resistance fighter who we finally got rid of. Isn't it all great? So even though it feels like a bit of a, let's do some history, actually, there's quite a lot going on in that little bit that's really interesting, and problems or opportunities with asides continue throughout the scene. Lynn?
Yeah, I like what you said about the Praetorian Guard, and that I think the audience then would have known, and many people in our audience would know, that the Praetorian Guard basically decided who was going to be emperor. They made Claudius emperor. So, yeah, they were the kingmakers. They were these armed thugs. You were an emperor if the Praetorian Guard wasn't behind you. That's an important personnel change.
Yeah, but also I think we should just bring up, because he didn't mention it, because there wasn't a stage direction explicitly saying it. But I was going, Agrippina, maybe she's fine. And then they do actually bring in the head of something. It was mentioned earlier, but it's sort of when someone actually walks in and goes, "Ooh, head of my enemy, isn't this fun?"
And I just had to laugh at the particular brand of ass kissing. Being Caesar Britannicus is much more prestigious than being Scipio Africanus. What? Of course, and I don't know whether that's them flattering Claudius Caesar, or whether that's the Britons trying to the English trying to gin themselves up. But the defeat of Carthage was really like the pivotal moment in Roman history. It's like basically now we can take over the Mediterranean. And Britain was always at best a wash for the Roman Empire economically. It cost about as much to maintain as it brought in. So it was really not. Yeah, it really is. It really is. I suspect there's a little bit of just people in the audience going, "That's us," moment, which is always a fun gambit actually to play. But yes, I think that is absolutely true. That it's just like, you can't say that conquering Britain is the greatest deed of arms ever. I mean, it was a job.
It was a job, and you didn't conquer all of it. But you for once you actually got a foothold on the country, whereas before, Julius Caesar just popped in and went hi, and then Lois.
Yeah, there's sort of a footnote on Lolia Paulina, because the only other thing I knew about her, really, but the audience might remember, is a few lines in Johnson's Volpone, when I think Volpone is offering Celia lots of jewels, and he says he's got a diamond, would have bought Lolia Paulina when she came in like starlight, hid with jewels that were the spoil of provinces. I mean, it's one of the really great poetic bits in that play, so people might have remembered it, but it's really odd. I mean, the Lolia Paulina doesn't ring any bells to most people otherwise, I think.
I think in this context, it's a stage prop. That logic of
that gross effect of
There's stuff about jewels in this too, though. She must have been famous for being loaded with jewels at some point.
Well, I mean, she might still have some earrings on. I don't know. Sorry, being very, very grim there. Eric, and then Aliki. Then we must move on.
Well, what I find interesting is that, like you said, that thing about they bring in the head, and it's a very public scene. So there's a problem going. Well, obviously Seneca has a reason to be afraid of her, and he probably knows that. It's basically going, you cross me, you end up like this. And it kind of, she has the power to make it happen. But even when, I assume by the time Claudius comes in, Caesar comes in, the head is off stage, but still she kind of goes, oh, I won't meddle. She kind of goes, will you change the head of the guard, or will we just I won't meddle. Nothing will happen. Nothing can possibly go wrong if I meddle.
Yeah, the power plays here are actually very subtle. It's the thing about if you are in charge, genuinely in charge, you don't need to demonstrate you're in charge. So it's it's not like she brings in the head it's just that's just something that's happening. That's in the background. She doesn't need to do more with that than what she does. And the same with the persuading of Claudius is obviously, that this is, she's got her entourage who she primes to say, you are my seconds. You're there in support to make this thing happen. Aliki.
I think Lolia Paulina was mentioned in the first big scene as one of the reasons we know Agrippina's evil. And they said, well, she was so rich and she had all of her property taken away from her. And now I think Agrippina wants her dead too. And then, ta-da!
Yeah. Yes, it was set up. It was set up earlier. That's the problem with being rich. People do it does put a big target on your back for various reasons. Okay, we're into Act 2. I don't know, that Act 1 sort of has a unity to itself, but I wasn't feeling that the act structure is perhaps as important as I suspected it might be. We shall see. Act 2, Scene 1, enter Poppaea and Otho.
My love, dear Otho, fain would bid thee stay. But danger now forbids it, for my lord returns by this time homewards from the palace.
We must bade in a time's necessity, sweetest Poppaea, though I part from thee with such a sadness as will lose by all comparisons and cannot be expressed but by itself. To say that Otho parts from fair Poppaea is more tragical than soul from body, honour from a man.
I could methinks flatter my fears to keep thee ever here.
And I can scorn all fears and dangers too, if thou command me stay.
No, go, my love, and warily let's meet, that we may often meet. But why should still our highest bliss want freedom?
'Tis my fair one, the envy of the gods who think the state of man would equal theirs. If greatest joys were easiest to obtain, and therefore still in horrid dangers wrap their dearest gifts, as all the poets' ancient fables taught. Fire-breathing boars did guard the Colchian fleece, and waking dragon kept the golden fruit. But thou, Poppaea, in my thoughts a prize of greater value. and more lustre far than that which drew the bold Thessian forth so far from Greece, or a maid, Amincla's son, invade Hebrides, art kept from me by stronger guards, the awful Roman laws, that laws resist our love.
Oh, where was Otho then, when my virgin blossom was the hope of 1,000 noble youth? Had thou been seen, Poppaea's bed and beauty had been thine, and with a lawful, uncontrolled flame had met thy wish in those delights which now we are enforced to steal.
Must it be so forever then?
It must while Rufus lives.
Nor can I blame blessed Rufus, if he strive to keep that wealth which, if it lay beyond the Indian Ganges, Scythian Tanis, or honoured Armond's scorch and thirsty sands, would draw the Roman monarch to forsook his world's imperial seat there to enjoy, and think those banished that remain at Rome. If I were Caesar, and condemned by fate to want Poppaea's love, I should be poor. No other dear prerogative could that high wreath bestow, but only to power make thee mine without a rival. I might then with boldness take thee from Crispin's arms.
But could that act be lawful?
Canst thou doubt it? Were two loves meet, can marriage be unlawful? Of which love it is the soul, the very from which it gives its being no dead onward tie. But nature's strong inward sympathy can make a marriage, which the gods alone have power to breed in us, and therefore they have only power to tie so sweet a knot. I am thy mate, nor did thy father, when he gave that snowy hand unto another, aught but rebel against the gods' decree.
Thou art too good an advocate, and I too partial for a judge.
Be constant to me, till fortune give a bolder privilege and warrant our love, of which I have received such fair presages as I cannot despair. Meanwhile, by stealth I must behold those starry eyes, and thank myself most happy in that, though no man knows my happiness.
Can men count those delights a happiness which they conceal?
Yes, those that truly love.
Enter Fulvia.
Madam, my lord is come.
Farewell, dear Otho.
Farewell. Love guard thee till we meet again.
Exit Otho. Enter Crispinus and Geta.
Come, Lucius, study to forget it now, and let's be truly merry. My Poppaea, bid Lucius Geta welcome, my colleague that was, but still my friend.
You are most welcome.
Thanks, fairest lady.
But my lord, what means that speech of yours, that Lucius Geta once was your colleague and is not?
I tell thee, great Agrippina has commanded Caesar to command Pallas, to command us too, to quit our charge and suddenly resign the government of the Praetorian camp to Burrus hand, at which he storms. But I am merrier far and lighter than before. We may live freely now. Caesar has ta'en a weighty burden from my weary neck. I thank his goodness.
Thank his sottishness, 'tis that has pleasured you. Friend, it needs must grieve all noble hearts that can love justice and pity suffering innocence to see the harmless years of young Britannicus exposed to all the malice of his foes, and stupid Caesar made the instrument to ruin his own son, whilst his great power by others is abused against himself and his posterity.
I do believe it.
His servants all that to himself were true or faithful to his son are murthered now, or else displaced by her. Our truce the cause that we have lost our places.
It is no matter. We lose no honour by our truth, and since while we had power, we faithfully discharged our trust to Caesar, let's no longer strive to guard him against his will, but take his gift. He gives us ease and freedom to retire and taste the sweets of privity, and there enjoy our lives free from the glorious noise and troubles of a court. Instead of waiting on Caesar now, on thee I will bestow that time, my fair Poppaea, and attend on thy delights. Thou wilt not cast me off, as Caesar does?
Cannot promise you. I know her heart better than you in that.
None can describe the sweets of country life, but those blessed men that do enjoy and taste them. Plain husbandmen, though far below our pitch of fortune placed, enjoy a wealth above us, to whom the earth with true and bounteous justice, free from war's cares, returns an easy food. They breathe the fresh and uncorrupted air, and by clear brooks enjoy untroubled sleeps. Their state is fearless and secure, enriched with several blessings, such as greatest kings might in true justice envy, and themselves would count too happy if they truly knew them.
'Tis true, Crispinus, greatest monarchs oft have, in the midst of all their careful glories, desired such lives as those plain people lead.
Let us enjoy that happiness then, Lucius. The country sports and recreations, friends as innocent as we, with whom we need not fear the strength of richest wine in drawing out our secrets, but well filled at supper time may hold a free discourse of Caesar's weakness, of the wealth and pride of his freedmen, how lordly Pallas rules, how fierce and cruel Agrippina is, what slaves the Roman Senate are become, and yet next morn awake with confidence.
All this, my lord, you may discourse at Rome, if you can wisely choose your company.
No, well said, Poppaea. Thou art a woman, right? Thou lovest the city well.
I cannot blame her. Such beauty seeks no corners, but may well become the imperial city of the world.
Come, Lucius Geta, let's go in and laugh at our proud enemies, enjoy their malice, and drown our cares in rich Falernian wine, as ancient as Optimus' consulship.
Enter to them, Narcissus.
Here comes a man Crispinus, I believe, is sorry for this change.
I think so, Lucius.
Hail, noble Romans.
Hail to you, Narcissus. How dare you venture a salute on us, or make a visit to such guilty men?
Guilty, my lord, in what?
In being wronged. Those that are wronged in court are made offenders.
I must confess, my lord, it was a wrong to you and to your colleague to be displaced. But you have spirits great enough to scorn that injury and pity him that did it. I mean that suffered his proud foes to do it, rather against himself than you. The wrong must fall on Caesar and his hapless house. Blinded by fate and near his fall, he throws away the best supporters of his state.
The thought of that, as I am true, Narcissus, afflicts me more than mine own loss can do.
For me, I think myself well freed from trouble, were it not the fear for poor Britannicus.
I do believe it, noble lords, but you are now discharged and may retire with safety. My part is yet to play, a part of danger, and I will act it bravely. Here I vow by all the gods no fear shall make me shrink, till I have once more righted Claudius against the lusts and treasons of a wife. Nor do I boast of Messalina's death. It was the time's necessity that made me then to show my power. That power perchance is yet as much, nor shall the lordly Pallas, though swelled with Agrippina's lustful favors and backed by her authority, he think himself sole ruler in the imperial house, find that Narcissus is so fallen in spirit, but that I dare attempt as much as then. Great Caesar's safety is as much in danger as then it was, his nuptial bed as stained, and I will die or take the same revenge that then was taken. All their plots and treasons will I reveal to Caesar, and pursue it with such a dauntless constancy, that if the gods forget not to be just, this day proud Agrippina and her minion fall. The young Britannicus shall stand secure in his high birthright. Messalina's ghost shall then, perchance, although she hate me now, forgive the hand that caused her overthrow.
Bravely resolved, Narcissus.
You shall do an act that all good men shall thank you for. Will you go in and taste my wine?
Not now. I came but only to reveal my purpose to you, whose noble wishes may befriend it, and, when occasion serves, may truly witness my just intents. This hour I'm expected by Caesar in his gardens. There I'll put my life upon the hazard. Every minute may breed a change, and all delays have danger. For Caesar, upon these discoveries that I already have made to him, uttered some words last night at supper in his wine, of which I fear that Agrippina took too great a notice. Therefore, speed must help us. Farewell, my lords.
Farewell, the gods assist thee.
Okay, there's lots of stuff in here that is potential pitfalls, but is also lots of really quite playable action, because there are several little ironies at play going on here. You've got a cuckolded husband coming in and saying, "Oh, isn't being married great?" And then also the sort of political naivety of going of talking about certain things. And I just love the way that Narcissus it's sort of feels a little guilty about Messalina's death, but not really. But just keeps bringing it up in passing. I quite like that. But I love the fact that it says, "I'm going to tell the emperor. I'm going to solve all these problems." And the response he gets is, "Would you like some wine?" From Crispinus, who you just kind of feel, oh, he's too good to survive, isn't he? He's in this context, he doesn't stand a chance, does he? Lynn, then Lois.
I've just noticed an interesting structural feature of this text, that you have a scene, 2 or 3 characters, and then 1 or 2 of them go off, and another set of people come on. You have a continuous action, but you have basically 2 scenes. So we have a scene between Otho and Poppaea, so we know, okay, this woman who's part of the elite is having an affair, and then you get the political story later, but Poppaea doesn't seem to leave stage, and Fulvia, who's probably her waiting gentlewoman, is also on stage. So that's a sort of a blocking challenge, a staging challenge. You have people on stage from sort of a previous unit of action who don't leave stage, but they really don't have anything to do. So
it might be that there are some stage directions missing. We seem to be missing a number of exit cues actually from this text. So there may be some issues that will be repairable or discussable. Do they exit or do they stay on? Because they're, it heightens the irony if she has to stand there listening to her husband talking away. Which
Fulvia has a line fairly late in the scene, like, yeah, right.
Yeah. But that could be just clearing some plates, just popping in and out, depending on what her duties are. Lois, then Eric.
Yeah, it's nice that, as usual, the woman wants to stay in town and the husband is talking about going off and contemplating in nature. But Narcissus, I think, is not really being some naive, but he's also not. He keeps talking about how he's going to do something really brave, he's fearless, etc. And he's already said in the earlier scene that he's been pretty bad, and if he's got a choice of what to do, he might as well do what looks more like the right thing. I suppose this is getting back to the dignitas idea, perhaps, that he would like to be remembered for having done something more or less decent.
Or it's the more modern interpretation of the word dignitas. He's thinking towards his end. Which everyone seems to have that sort of spectre over their shoulder, so they're all sort of there. Maybe that's why Crispinus is getting drunk, because look, you don't want to think about politics in this court. Just keep drinking the wine. Eric,
I was going to say that it's nice to have a play where you've got like the sort of, you don't have the Middleton problem where something happens and then you need an explanation in the next scene, which is nice. Because you've already had the sort of, we've had the Otho and Poppaea bit. So we know that part is actually not, like, when Crispinus makes the observation about, I will dedicate myself to you now, it kind of, like, you know where it's going, kind of, in a way. And also, this is a history play. It's not, but also a love story. So it's kind of what...
Well, It feels to me like a soap opera. It really does. We've got and a relatively, grounded sort of love scene there. Of these two who are not being, oh, I'm having an affair and evil. They're sort of going, well, it's all a bit awkward. I wish I'd married you earlier, and it would all been fine. And this is and Roman society is actually relatively good in terms of divorce. In terms of you can get divorced and marry somebody else and move on and things. There are routes to do that in a way that an early modern society really doesn't have in place. Not saying it's an equal rights, but it is a thing that can happen. So they may have some hope there. Other thoughts before we move on? Okay, let's move into Act 2, Scene 2. Enter Otho alone.
So rich a bondage is Poppaea's love, that I were base if I should wish for freedom. Nay, no more, ingrate, should I desire to change so sweet a care for quietness itself. Should I suppose that state, which some dull souls call calm content, were half so rich, so free, as these pinnings, this captivity? Were there in love no cares, no sighs, no fears, there were in love no happiness at all? What bliss, what wealth did e'er the world bestow on man, but cares and fears attend it? Yet who so base as to be freed from those would throw away the highest bliss on earth? Let silly shepherds, whose poor narrow souls not much exceed the beasts they tend and feed, that know, like them, no farther regions than some few fields, no larger bounds of pleasure than satisfaction of bare nature's needs, be still secure, since they have naught to lose, and rest content, because they never knew what cities were and gorgeous palaces. Should monarchs, who are taught to know the extent of nature's wealth, what the world affords, forgo their glorious fortunes, because they want that wretched thing which only sorry, am I working again?
Yes, you're still here. You were always here.
Because and glorious palaces, should monarchs who are taught to know the extent of nature's wealth and what the world affords forgo their glorious fortunes, because they want that wretched thing which only ignorance and low contempt can give, security? Should I forgo my fair Poppaea's love because some cares, some fears and sighs attend it, when every smile of hers can recompense 1,000 such? Were too much poorness in me, had I ne'er seen those starry eyes of hers, more hapless far my ignorance had been, had I had, like wretched men that are born blind, never known that there was a sun to gild the world, but to enjoy her love without all fears, without all rivals, were a bliss beyond mortality. The gods would envy me. She's now another's man. That may be thought the greatest bar to Otho's happiness, but I have framed in my jealous thoughts a greater bar than that. Young Nero Caesar, in whose acquaintance I of late have found so near a room, so fair a passage as tell us, is like to imperial wreath. His power may take her from me, from Crispin's arms, but then, perchance, I lose her more than ever. Or should he see her now to revival me, I were undone. He's amorous, and oft solicits me to let him see my mistress. I, for that friendship which I dare not lose, dare not deny his opportunity, and therefore to prevent what may ensure, for yet he never heard Poppaea's name, I have made love to that fair freed woman, young Asante of mean rank, but such a face as whosoever had not seen Poppaea would think that Asante nature's masterpiece. Oh, on her will I divert young Nero's love, and to that purpose I have got her picture. But here he comes.
Enter Nero to him.
Ah, where's Nero?
Who's Nero?
What Otho, still retired? Where lives the face that breeds this melancholy? There is no other cause can do it. I know thou art not busied with affairs of state. I prithee, let me see her. A friend's counsel may ease thy passion.
'Tis not fit for a prince should stoop so low as to the passions of private men.
The name of friend admits of no such distance.
Sir, no man whom you are pleased to call a friend deserves that name, unless he know himself to be your servant.
Come, prithee, leave thy fooling and be plain. Where there is no familiarity, society is lost. Why art thou fearful to let me see her, whosoe'er she be?
Sir, I could give you a plain common reason. If she be foul, she is not worth your sight. If fair, you are too great a rival for me. But yet, no, sir, I am so free from those unworthy fears that I dare trust my life, my love, and all I have into your hands.
Spoke like a friend, and thou mayst safely do it. Then first behold her picture, and by that find whether she be worth the sight or no.
Can any mortal beauty be so sweet?
Wait, something's wrong here.
Sorry.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense, does it?
Oh, yes, we got two Neros. Have we accidentally swapped?
No, I think it's.
I think we're missing an Otho
Thou
line.
may safely do it, and then Otho goes. Then first behold her picture.
Yeah, that makes sense. Try it that way. Do Otho. Could you read then first behold her picture?
Where are we?
Nero's got a line. Spoke like a friend.
Oh yeah. Then first behold her picture, and by that find whether she be worth the sight or no.
Can any mortal beauty be so sweet?
I would there were not.
Sure, the painter flatters.
Oh no, he had no art enough to reach the glory of it. Were the substance here, how dull would this now lovely table show? See how his greedy eyes doth devour the picture. He's caught! Cupid, I thank thee now.
I never saw true beauty till this hour. But wherefore didst thou wish there were no substance so sweet as this? Why wouldst thou be deprived of such a happiness? But I perceive it is thy fear. Let it not be so. I but desire to see whether the painter have erred or no. Do not think, my Otho, that I will wrong thy love so much, or make my wife Octavia jealous.
Sir, howe'er my life, my love, and fortunes all are yours.
And exit. So, we get a very long speech from Otho, which a lot of which I liked. I mean, but I was starting to go in places there. There was a lot of it, and maybe we could repurpose some of it somewhere else. And then we get this little sort of, he's got a cunning plan. I'm pretending to woo someone else. You could do the thing. It's again, it's an interesting sort of it's semi-introduced earlier, and these maneuverings. So yeah, it's an odd little scene. We may need to do the next couple of scenes to understand how it fits within the schema, because it's sort of like, okay, I can sort of see where this is going, but it's like this court politics. It's complicated, isn't it? Lois.
Yeah, this looks like a borrowing from, well, I don't know where the story started, but we did read another play set, I think, in medieval times in England, where somebody is trying to save his wife from being pursued, I think, by the king. and pretends that it's somebody else, I think. And of course, the king eventually finds out who it really is. I think something like the same plot is being used here, and this is presumably fiction rather than part of Roman history.
I mean, frankly, who knows? Because there are so many little gossipy asides that maybe this is based on something. I don't know. Maybe one of our viewers will know and be able to put something in the chat. But no, I have no knowledge whether any of this is true in any meaningful sense. But hey, it sort of fits. It fits in with the core. It's just I am just slightly worried the audience is now going, hang on, what's the plot now? Which plot am I following now? Because there's quite a few of them now. Yeah. But hey, I'm still going with it. Which is nice. Okay, let's go back to the plots hinted at in the scene before. Act 2, Scene 3. Enter Caesar, Claudius, and Narcissus.
Your Majesty may yet prevent it all, and justly throw upon the traitors' heads that ruin which so boldly threatens you, and your too much abused family. Yet Caesar may be safe, if he will use that power the gods have put into his hands.
What course, Narcissus, can we run to make the people sensible of our estate? What danger threatens us, and how our justice is forced to meet the treasons of a wife?
Let not too vain a care of popular breath, or what the vulgar may surmise, outweigh the safety of your person and your house. But I am most assured that all the world, except yourself, have long observed their plots. And if they see your wakened justice now arise to censure Agrippina's death, they will not think the execution done too soon upon her. These humble knees, O Caesar, which for your safety I so oft have bowed before the gods, now to your sacred self I bow, entreating that you would be safe, and not believe the gods by miracle will work for you, while you neglect yourself.
Arise, Narcissus. 'Tis the unhappy fate of princes ever, as Augustus Caesar was wont to say. The people ne'er believe that treasons were complotted against their persons until those treasons take effect. And then too late, perchance, they pity and believe.
But was the wise Augustus, therefore, slow or timorous to cut offenders off? Feared he the people's whispers? Caesar, no, he well knew to use the sword he had. He had not else lived till time's gentle hand dissolved in peace his long felicity, and made the world by such a continuance of power believe he was a god on earth.
But some offenders are too great to suffer the common course of justice. Against such wise princes have forborne to draw the sword, and rather sought some ways of policy how to ensnare them.
Caesar, those are ways as much unfit for princes as unsafe. As many monarchs have in dangerous times been ruined quite by going ways too low, though they have seemed subtle, as proud subjects have been undone by playing princes' parts. And as this high and open way befits the power and person of earth's greatest monarch, so it befits the time's necessity. You have already, Caesar, showed your sword, and if you strike not now, you do not right yourself at all, but only arm your foes with plots of mischief to prevent their own, and hasten on your quick destruction. You have already threatened, and those speeches by Agrippina and her minion Pallas were overheard, who, like seen snakes, will now bestir themselves in a more desperate fury. I have already cast mine own poor life into the utmost hazard, but alas, that is a thing not now considerable. The gods above can tell how willingly for Caesar's safety I would sacrifice this life. Make me the chiefest instrument, impose what part of this exploit you please upon Narcissus' hand, and if I fail to execute, I'll not refuse to die.
My Narcissus, I have found thy faith in other services. It is resolved. Their pride shall feel my justice. Thou shalt see how soon I will secure myself and thee.
And they exit. We'll go straight into the next scene. Act 2, Scene 4. Enter Agrippina and Pallas.
We are discovered, Pallas. All our drifts are sounded by Narcissus, and by him laid out to Caesar, who dissembling yet the knowledge of it seeks a sudden way to ruin both of us. Nor had we feared so soon as felt his fury, had not wine betrayed his thoughts to us. You know last night what speeches Caesar in his drunkenness let fall before us, and 'twas lately told me that meeting young Britannicus he wept, confessed that he had wronged him, and there vowed a quick redress. What counsel shall we take?
We have no time for counsel, but must act as soon as think. We go not now to work, but to prevent a mischief, and our cure must be as strong and quick of operation as our disease is dangerous and sudden. That bird that sees the snare and will be caught deserves his death. And since that Caesar knows his purpose is discovered, as Narcissus has before this informed him that we heard it, he'll quickly act what else he had deferred. No way is left us but to meet the danger, and for prevention first attempt to do that which we fear to suffer.
By what means shall we procure his death? For poison slow perchance may fall to lend a timely help unto our safety, and too quick a venom may make the fact suspected.
Should the fact be ne'er so much suspected, your estate would be more safe than now it is. But who would dare to utter it when Caesar's dead? And your own son, the emperor, for so my confidence assures me it will be. Therefore be speedy, madam, for your danger, where fame, where life and empire all are threatened, gives you no nice election. So it be done, no matter how.
Thou hast confirmed me, Pallas. The way is resolved already. There were lately the fairest mushrooms sent from Libya that e'er these eyes beheld, a meat which he affects with greediness. In one of those Caesar shall meet his death. If that should fail, his chief physician, Xenophon, is mine. But are things strong and ready to confirm the empire upon Nero?
'Tis the best and happiest time, before Britannicus be grown to riper years, while yet he wears his childish robe, and Nero has been shown to all the people in triumphal weeds. But when the deed is done, place warily your guards about the palace gates, and keep Britannicus within. Whilst Nero, backed by Seneca and Burrus, by the camp and senate be saluted emperor, and all be settled sure.
How fit a time to work his own destruction Caesar chose, to tempt with threatening Agrippina's fury.
And they exit. End of Act 2. It's quite nice actually running those two scenes together, because actually they have a sort of nice impetus. They're quite punchy scenes. Yes, they're sort of discussing things that are going to happen off stage or happen later. But they have that sort of forward momentum, which actually the previous scene with Otho and Nero kind of felt like that slightly killed the momentum. I'm a bit worried about that scene for momentum and pace. And it's setting up something that I don't think you'll get fruition for a while. Whereas these two scenes, Narcissus going, Caesar, we've got to act now because otherwise they'll kill you. And then next scene is, we better act now, otherwise he's going to get us. And it's like the two people they're reacting to each other because the Caesar unfortunately got a bit drunk and said some things, and historical details, poisoning with the mushrooms. That's supposedly how it happens. So all those those little bits are in there. But again, you do get a proper sense of danger, and we've got to do this now, otherwise he's going to do it to us because he knows that we know that he knows that we know, and round and round it goes. It's doing a lot of things, this play, and I am wondering about. Because it's claimed it was staged, so I'm curious now as to in what context. I don't know. I'm suspecting in a more academic context. I don't think this is a commercial play, but that suggests potentially relatively small stages and difficult spaces, which leads to a relative paucity of people on stage at any one time, and that sense of flowing scenes flowing into each other, a long scene, but it's actually several units of action, and that's a structure that we see. So it's sort of, I think it manages to get the best out of, say, a more neoclassical frame of writing, and the best out of a practical staging as well. I think it is doing its own thing that's quite interesting. There are traps, there are problems here, there are things that we could lose the audience with. It's going to require some attention, but it's got a bit of life to it, and I'm really liking this. And certainly as a text to unpack, it's got some really nice things going on. A lot of people as well, but it's, you know, there aren't that many people on at any one time, but there's a massive cast. They said they should start dropping like flies, so it should get a bit easier once we get about halfway through. Thoughts from the room about this these last couple of scenes of Act 2, Eric?
I was just going to say that I'm enjoying how he kind of name drops occasionally. He's like, yes, I've done my research, in case you hadn't noticed. Yes, Xenophon, his chief physician. Yes, Lolia Paulina and all that stuff. And it's like, yeah, of course. We totally know who that is.
And I said soap opera earlier, and it does feel... I mean, maybe that's just the advantage of presenting it to an audience that knows its classical history. Is that in the sense you don't need to get the audience up to speed because they already know the soap opera and where we are in the soap, you know, in that sense that I feel like it needs, when I said earlier, it feels like it just follows straight on from I, Claudius. And to a degree it kind of can. And on that mode, that it's got sort of that's sort of a way of thinking about it, is that this is actually we're jumping in on an episode of an ongoing serial, and we just happen to be here with these characters at this particular moment. That's not necessarily helpful for an audience, but it is an interesting way of thinking about it. So, other thoughts about where we are? Lois, and then Alan. Oh, muted at present, I think.
Yeah, the main problem for me is that it really is all talk and no action. I mean, maybe in the next scene we'll finally see some mushrooms, but I mean, we haven't even seen wine. You know, somebody just says, let's go in and drink some wine. They don't even have anybody pouring wine on the stage. It's extremely static from that point of view. Obviously you could jazz it up, but as written, it seems to be entirely people coming on and talking and going off again.
Yeah, and that's where I was sort of feeling that we had a bit of momentum here. We had some momentum earlier, and it is that's almost neoclassical, but not quite-ness to it all. You know, in the sense there is a bit of movement, but you're right, there isn't on-stage murdering going on here. You know, a head's brought on in a bag. You know, yeah, and that's. I mean, that's the form it's doing. It's whether we can keep that ball up in the air, really, isn't it? Lynn. Oh, sorry, Alan.
Yeah.
Then Lynn. Sorry. Alan was next. Sorry.
Yeah, and I must admit, I think that this could actually work without people having the background knowledge of the history of this particular part of the Roman Empire, because it works on its own internal logic, and the fact that there are names which are known to those who've got a nodding acquaintance with classic Roman history of the first century, it still works as drama without it.
I think that the way to approach this is actually, depending on how annoying you want to be to your cast, is you leave it relatively uncut initially, and then as you just lose the audience in the previews to go, oh no, really, they've no idea what's going on at that moment. Okay, that reference goes, and you just sort of start filleting it that way. That's probably a terribly wasteful way of doing it, but you know, I'm always interested actually by just doing these plays uncut and actually what happens and actually how much audiences do stay with you, and with considerably harder text than this. So I as an exercise, that's sort of interesting. Is your journey really necessary? In Otho's case, possibly not. Lynn.
Yeah, Melissa's a good point, which hadn't occurred to me because I'm really enjoying the talk. It's yeah, I mean the verse is, you know, sort of poetic in moments, but also very lucid and easy to follow. So I'm really appreciating the actual language. But yeah, there's not a lot of action. One thing occurs to me you could do to spice it up a little is the scene with Otho and Poppaea. You can make it clear that they can't keep their hands off each other, so you can make that.
I think the thing is that with the busier scenes, the two-hander scenes, it is, you know, dialogue. With some of those earlier scenes, there is actually a lot going on. There's a lot of there are things happening within that. They may not be enacted things, but it sometimes feels more like a Chekhov play. That, in the sense, everything happens in between the acts, and then you just get to watch people doing the things. I think for an audio, for audio, this will be perfect. I mean, this will be a very, very nice audio drama, and it is a question of how how explicit we want to get in a live show. Yes. Other thoughts before I go to? Actually, Eric, and then I'll go to final thoughts.
Well, also, if stuff happens behind the scenes, like we've had that in a few plays from this period as well, it kind of means that the action keeps rolling. So you don't have to worry about like them hanging around talking about, so like, by the time the scene happens between Narcissus and Caesar, or Otho and Poppaea, something else is actually happening in the background. So you can actually, it means that parallel action happens, which is very lifelike and realistic, which is nice.
Yeah, and there's always recourse to dumb shows. People, we can do that. It's not an excessively long play, for a history play or a tragedy. I mean, it could do with, as I say, some trims, but and it's going to be over 2 hours. But as plays from this period go, this is not long, and so I'm not. That gives us some room for manoeuvre in terms of what you do with the action. Okay, final thoughts. Feel free to skip on if you feel you don't have any at this stage. We're only a little over a third of the way through. We're approaching the halfway mark. Lynsey, any final thoughts from an actor's point of view or other things about what this text is giving you?
Yes, I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying the language. I think it's very clear, and there's a nice density to it, which doesn't seem to interrupt the flow too much. And I agree that there can be some cuts made. Hard to know about Otho and Poppaea because we don't yet know how that subplot is going to play out. So we might need everything that's in that scene to stay, but otherwise I think there's some filleting there. And and it also, the framing device, as much fun as it is, also, if it doesn't pay off at the end, then that's also something that could be thought about. But now I'm finding it very clear, very easy. It's tripping off the tongue and all the rest of it. So it's I'm enjoying it.
And of course, with the advantage with Roman history plays is you can always program them into a season. So it's there is a place for this, which slightly improves its probability of performance above a random play about some random people. We don't quite have a proper sequence, I think, at this particular junction of the story. There's certainly we've got some overlapping material, but not quite doing the story in the same way. So that'd be quite something interesting to see what we could do with some of that. Connor, any final thoughts?
Yes, I'm enjoying it. It's very clear. The verse is lovely. It's a really nice actor's piece to work with. A few trims here and there, just to make my life easier as an actor. But otherwise, I'm quite enjoying it, and interested to see where things go later on during the week.
Yeah, you did draw a short straw with that speech. It's like random selection of names that nobody necessarily knows what to do with. One after the other, after the other, after the other. Random people of randomness. It was sometimes people win the lottery of what they read here, and sometimes the lottery is cruel. Mark, any final thoughts?
I'm interested to see where it goes. So far, I'm enjoying the fact that there's this like love plot, adultery plot going on that's also now tying into this whole plot with Nero and how he's going to be drawn into loving somebody else. I feel like I'm liking the combination of like the plotting of the politics, and I'm liking those love things that have come up, and yeah, overall I'm enjoying how people are reacting to the plotting. There seems to be a lot of life there so far.
Aliki, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I hate to say this because we're all about staging things, but there's almost something a bit television soap opera about it. See a lot of significant glances moments. And I like that. I mean, yeah, I agree with everyone. It's got life. It's got nice verse. So far, it's a goer.
Well, there's always the curse of the final sessions. There's still time. But the advantage with Roman history is you do know that a lot of people are going to die horribly, so that's always fun. So, Donald, any final thoughts?
It just occurred to me that, I mean, although it's a boy-heavy play, the title role is a lovely chewy part for a female actor post-restoration to take on. I think there's plenty to somebody in that particular role. So that's I don't think you'd have a job casting it. I think there'd be plenty of people who would like to get their teeth into Agrippina.
Yeah, and with Poppaea's doing some interesting work as well, and they're doing something that can be worked. I mean, we're inevitably going to be cross-gender casting, otherwise it's quite a sausage fest. But that was Rome, to be fair. Within Roman history, wasn't a very equal society. Lynn, any final thoughts?
Yeah, like agree with what everybody's said. Like what Lynsey said about the verse. Yeah, it's lucid without being boring. I think it gives a great insight that like close-ups would actually really would be very effective. And people exchanging meaningful glances and stuff like that. So actually, it actually would be very effective it's good for the camera. Yeah, and Agrippina is a great part for a mature woman. She's got an adult son, so it's like there are plenty of women's roles in the Restoration, but they're all ingenues. So this is so it's a great part. And I really like the Poppaea Otto subplot. I like the soap opera-ness of it. And it's actually quite relevant because Nero's inability to manage his desire is an indicator of his unfitness to rule. And his obsessive passion for Poppaea was notorious. And his marriage to her was very unpopular at the time. So it's actually quite it's actually quite relevant because it's kind of a barometer of his unfitness. So I think it's going to integrate really well, and I just sort of like this sort of soap opera aspect of it. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
Yes, I mean the only objection I've got with the Otho plotline is just his soliloquy when he comes back on again. I actually quite like that initial exchange between them, and where the plotline is going is quite interesting. It's just it's a very long speech that I felt not all was necessary, but some of it was. Alan, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think the thing maybe on the Otho one is, hold on a minute, I've only got X amount of lines. I need a few more. I think actually either this needs quite elaborate staging with, as you say, a lot of dumb show or action in the background to give the audience something to look at. I think it would also work quite well in audio if you've got people with sufficiently different voices so you could distinguish who was who.
Yeah, I mean that's always the problem when you've got a large cast is actually that differentiation is quite tricky. And yeah, visual signifiers do really help. Actually, but also just on stage. To stage this in a very simple way, I think would be quite effective as well. Actually, not distrust the text and throw too many bells and whistles over it. Of actually just saying no, let's just let the text speak and see what happens, and then see how many people are there after the interval. That's always a fairly good test. Aaron, any final thoughts?
I'm very much enjoying it. The only thought I really had was we had kind of a conversation earlier about the show at the beginning or whether it's going to come back. And honestly, it just seems like it was there to quiet everyone down so we could hit the ground running once we started the show. And I think we have ways of doing that now. So I don't know that we necessarily need the ghost and all that, but I'm very much enjoying it. I find the speeches move extremely well, and they're a lot of fun to do also. So I think so far it's good. I may not be here for the final session, so it will probably always be a good play for me.
Well, I'm going to champion keeping the ghost because I just love the opening. I do agree. I do agree. It's not necessarily wholly necessary, but I like the idea that maybe there's some sort of monstrous thing under the surface interfering with everybody's life. I'll briefly go to Aliki.
I like the idea of a very simple staging, and I think that little opener could work really well with just two people talking to each other, being really evil in a quite understated way in a small space. And then they go, and all of this starts to happen again in this. Anyway, yeah, I don't want to go on, but I think this is nice. I'm enjoying this text.
Lois, any final thoughts?
I don't know. It's clearly written. It works quite well, and I like some of Otho's speech. I mean, that whole thing of all the cares and troubles of love. That's the whole point of it, isn't it? And danger, great. He's probably going to think differently when the trap closes on him. But there is quite a lot of irony, which one could bring out probably more. I mean, the only thing for me is just that this seems like your kind of standard corrupt ancient Roman court plot, and I've seen it in so many other plays, and it's not feeling very different from those, apart from this rather unexpected plot about Otho and Poppaea.
Eric, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I think it's and I feel like you need to keep the ghost and Megaera unless you just want kind of well, I mean, it's kind of like the ghost in not the ghost, but the whole Megaera and the snakes in the attic kind of thing in Tancred and Gismunda. Like if you don't keep that, then it kind of obviously they use that as a sort of excuse for why the father gets jealous and all that, but I feel like if it's a good sort of workshop part as well. You could also, even if you don't use it in the final performance, you could use it for other things, like sort of like classical tragedy intros or something, or I don't know, just that kind of, yeah. Although we already know what's going to happen, so I don't know if that's a tragedy as well.
I feel it's just a really knockout way of starting out, and you do start with a mission statement of just go there and make everybody rip each other apart, and that's I mean there's several bits. I'm just looking actually what Megaera's saying throughout this. I'm just going, yeah, they're pretty good taglines to put on a poster, actually. To say what is this show? And I think, yeah, let mischief still reign here. And there's some good material. But yes, I think there are traps. I think there are traps in this text. There are things that you need to make some decisions about before you start, and things also to workshop and play with as you go along, and having a good clear line on those details. How much does an audience need to know about some of the more peripheral references? We'll know by the end of it whether some of them bear fruit later on thematically or whether they're not necessary really. But then there are sometimes just details that the audience don't need to know who this person is, so long as it's as long as it doesn't stop the action. Yeah. But there's still 2.5 sessions that may disappoint us. So, we'll see where we go. Any additional thoughts anyone wants to throw in before I close us off? Okay. So all that remains is to thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. We will continue this next time. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. Rip up his parents' bowels.